is time. Chat. Chat, it is time. It is time for the Mafia roll call. Chat, before anybody starts gifting, hold on. We're closing in on 200,000. Chat, today was a banger. If you guys have enjoyed, if you guys like love what we was watching, we still got a lot more to do. Yeah, I'm gonna join Max's Discord. I'm gonna join it. Everybody, hold your gifteds. Remember, this is a subathon. We're going for a world record of 326.252. I'm gonna wash my hands. My dick is not dirty. Stop watching me. My dick not dirty. Alright? Chat, listen to me. I love all, first of all, everybody in here is a fucking amazing. Whoever watched that from beginning to end. Who watched that whole shit beginning to end just now? Because that was crazy. I ain't gonna lie. He was a good guess. He was good. I ain't gonna lie, chat. He was good in his own way. He was good in his own way, if that makes sense.
Nigga, just say what you mean, bro. Take a little bit, bro.
I'd rather him be like that than just be. Feel me? It was a good experience, chat. I'm not gonna lie, bro. But other than that, chat, listen to me. Chat, we're closing in on 200,000. Everybody hold their gifteds. If nobody knows what the Mafia method is, the Mafia method is you have to be able to, when this beat drops, everybody gifts, everybody help a fellow brother or sister in the chat. If you have a blue crown next to your name, everybody sub up. If you have a blue crown next to your name, you can sub for the free ski, no ads all month. Also, we giving away PCs, so if you a sub, you get a PC. A lot of these giveaways and shit that we're doing will be only sub only. I love you guys so much. Everybody lock in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fuck. Flax and thanks for the pocket, appreciate it. Cal, thanks for the prime. Carolina, thanks for the pre-sub. Motherfucking Yusuf Buff, thanks for the 5 gift, appreciate it. LeVon, thanks for the motherfucking 10 gift, appreciate it. Patat, thanks for the 5 gift, appreciate it. Hector, thanks for the 10 gift, appreciate it. Grimmy, thanks for the 1 gift. Notorious, thanks for the 1. Lil Big, thanks for the 1. LCB, thanks for the 1. Country, thanks for the 1. Plug, thanks for the 1. Grizzly, thanks for the 1. Chris Grizzle, thanks for the 5 gifted. David, thanks for the motherfucking 25 gifted. J Boy, thanks for the 5 gifted. Caddy, thanks for the 5 gifted. Hector, thank you so much. Dreamville, thank you so much. Shush Pikabi, thank you so much. Keel, thanks for the sub. Just Gaming, thanks for the sub. Crappie, thank you so much for the sub. Oh my god. I gotta fucking restart. Go to fucking commercial, bruh. Go to commercial.
Ya vende. ¿Ese es Omar? ¿Omar?
Sí, huevón, puta era lo mejor. Es que es un recuerdo.
I've never even like thought about that, and I don't look at that.
So let me ask you a question. What if fucking Sweater...
I am not going anywhere.
Ow. Hey, Dreadnought. Hey, Pressure. Minute.
I was saying that to Morgan.
Oh, okay, Sig.
Black YouTubers back in 2016 all the way up to like 2020. One of the first names that probably come So if you were watching black YouTubers back in 2016 all the way up to like 2020, one of the first names that probably comes to your mind is Soluminati. And over the years, Soluminati managed to build a fan base of over 2 million people while also becoming one of the most influential black YouTubers in recent history. But some people may say that Soluminati's career was cut very short and he never got to reach his full potential as a YouTuber, because in the midst of all of this popularity that he was receiving, Soluminati would start to become more and more inconsistent on his main YouTube channel, and this is because Soluminati started to become very spiritual, and this will lead to him slowly drifting away from the internet completely. But all of this will start with one specific person who we're going to be mentioning a lot in this video. So with that being said, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join the Trap House with the biggest trapper. And while you're at it, don't forget to click that very first link down below in my description to join my Discord server and become an official member of the community. Now with all of that being said, let's get into how one person ruined Soluminati's career. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with who Soluminati is, he started his YouTube career about 9 years ago back in April of 2015, and he would start gaining a lot of popularity on YouTube by playing a game called NBA 2K. And he would play this game for years on his channel, becoming one of the biggest 2K YouTubers of all time. But if you've watched any of my videos before where I mentioned NBA 2K, more often than not, the creators who blow up from playing this game tend to quickly switch to a different form of content, because over the year 2K has just become this dying game that no one really watches much anymore. So when people get a little bit of popularity from playing it, they instantly switch over to something else. And this is eventually what Soluminati would end up doing, because after about 2 to 3 years of playing 2K on his channel, he would officially switch over to doing more reaction style content, and this is where his career would begin to reach new heights. And he would react to a variety of content on YouTube, such as videos that were just going viral at the time, or even just regular basketball 1v1s. And Soluminati was always one of those YouTubers who was known for keeping it real and never sugarcoating anything. And this will lead to him getting into a bunch of beefs on YouTube over the span of his career. He's beefed with a lot of popular black YouTubers over the years, such as Flight Reacts, who he's more so friends with now, to YouTubers like Cash Nasty, and his most infamous beef of all time, DDG. And his beef with DDG is going to become a little bit more important to note later on in the video. And during the time when So was doing these reactions and story times and beefing with all of these different creators, he was really in the prime of his career and became one of the most influential black YouTubers that there is, having multiple catchy phrases that people still use to this day.
Who would you say are the 3 most influential content creators?
I'll say in my lane, I'll say Soluminati. So.
And Soluminati, why him?
A lot of like his like terminology and lingo is still used to today. Like that's tough. Everybody said it, but he was the one who like made it like. I feel like he just really slept on as far as like the internet being how it is and why it is today.
But everything would begin to change for Soluminati and his career in the year of 2018. On June 16, 2018, Soluminati would post a video titled Soluminati First Girl Collab, and this single video would end up changing his life forever. And in this video, he would actually be reacting to his very first ever girl collab that wasn't even posted on his channel. He would do a video with a girl named OMGODPORTER, and the two would do a video titled Put Yourself in Any Dimension. Now, I can't find this original video anywhere on YouTube because it was on Ash's channel, and I think she deleted like her original channel, or the channel got deleted or something like that. But anyways, in this video, her and Soluminati would be talking about just a bunch of spiritual things, a world that was kind of unfamiliar with So. And while reacting to this video, So would express his interest for Ash because of how different she was than any other girl he met at the time.
When I first came across this girl, Chana, she was different than all of you, the rest of you bitches. She different than every last one of y'all. On top of that, she got her own swag. I love her ink. She got her own tattoos, her own ideas, her own bright mindset. Y'all know how like I got my own image? Like, this is who I am. I like she got so much potential. Like, I see the potential in her.
And after expressing how much he liked her and how different she was throughout this entire 19-minute video, the two would end up beginning to do a lot of content featuring each other. And after just a few weeks of talking and doing content together, Ash would admit that she began to really take a liking into Soluminati. And at first it was a little hard to get So to budge into liking her back, but eventually just a short time after, he began really liking her too, and the two would eventually start dating. And this would even lead to Ash getting Soluminati's name tattooed on her entire arm within the first month of even knowing him.
Shit, it hurts still. I know that's you just fun. You swear to God! You said God, yeah.
Say you swear to God! And this is really when So should have realized that she was going to ruin his life, because for one, they met, started talking, ended up dating, and then she got the tattoo of his name all within the first month of knowing him. And to top it all off, she didn't even get his real name, which is Javante, tattooed on her arm. She ended up getting his online name or his alias tattooed, which was Soluminati. And mind you, this was all within the very first month that they met.
Well, I went to college right out of high school, and I failed miserably. I decided to go back to...
The original video that they did together was uploaded back on like June 16, 2018, and she would end up getting this tattoo on July 9, 2018. So we're talking about like a 2 to 3 week time span here. And after the two would officially start dating, this would lead to them doing what any other couple did during this time on YouTube, which is posting a bunch of fake pranks and things like that onto the channel. And that was really a big content switch up for Soluminati, because he's never done anything like that beforehand, probably because he didn't have an actual girlfriend to do that type of content with. But when he finally started dating Ash, that's when he began spamming that form of content. And it ended up working out very well for his channel in the beginning, because all of these videos and pranks that he was doing with Ash ended up going extremely viral. But in the end, Ash would end up being the demise of his channel. After he did that first original video with Ash, which was putting yourself in any dimension, because of her, he began getting deeper and deeper into spirituality. And this would lead to him creating his own spiritual channel named Spiritual Self. And this will mark the beginning of the end of Soluminati as we knew him. So as we mentioned earlier in the video, he will post his first video with Ash on June 16, 2018, and just a little bit over 2 months later, on August 28, 2018, he will post his very first video on his Spiritual Soul channel, and this was a simple video titled Quitting Weed Day 1 and Day 2. And So would leave a comment on this video stating that he felt like he was losing himself and he had no one else to vent to, and he just wasn't the person that he wanted to be. He wanted to start giving up all the bad habits he had in his life in order to become a better role model for the people that watched him, as well as motivating others to do the same. And after making this channel back in August of 2018, just a few months would pass before him and Ash broke up, and they did have a bad breakup. They each made videos talking very poorly about one another, and this even would lead to Ash linking up with DDG, a person who Soluminati has had a very long beef history with. And DDG would even end up throwing a subliminal diss about Soluminati in one of his most popular songs, Moonwalking in Calabasas. And if you know Soluminati, you know he's going to respond to almost everything that involves him. He did end up responding to this whole Ash and DDG situation.
She said your dick was so, and she had told me you broke. Oh, that's tough.
Man, come on. That's how you want.
Almost everything that involves him. He did end up responding to this whole Ash and DDG situation.
She said your dick was so, and she had told me you broke. Oh, that's tough.
Man, come on. That's how you want. Swinging. He throwing them. I've been gone for a minute. Okay.
But even though he broke up with Ash during the early days of his spiritual journey, that would not slow him or this Spiritual Soul channel down at all. And like I said at first, this channel did originally just start off as a self-improvement channel, but it quickly became so much more than that, because over time, So started posting videos getting deeper and deeper into spirituality. These videos range from things that was as simple as meditating to some of the craziest conspiracy theories you'll ever hear.
More than 1 million kids come up missing per year. What do y'all think happened to these kids? And every time people come up missing, the more and more people come up missing, the more they release more chicken sandwiches and shit. I'm noticing that.
And it became apparent that this channel was going down like a path of quote-unquote wokeness, instead of staying true to what the channel was originally meant to be, which was self-improvement. But So did stay very consistent on his channel all the way up until like the pandemic had happened, simply because YouTube had this policy where they didn't really allow people to talk about the pandemic. But So was posting a lot of videos during this time talking about everything that YouTube didn't allow him to talk about.
The coronavirus ain't going nowhere. It's here. The mask permanent. It's not going nowhere. I hope y'all ready for these mandatory testing. It's going to be mandatory for you to get tested, or you're not working. You're not catching no flights. You're not doing anything that you've been doing while Trump been in office.
Which led to him getting striked a lot and not being able to post for a set amount of time. And this is when he really began slowing down on YouTube altogether, because he didn't post on his main channel much at all anymore, and he wasn't able to post on his spiritual channel much. So it got to a point where fans would rarely begin to see Soluminati. And since the year 2022, Soluminati hasn't really been consistent on either one of his YouTube channels. But there's some variables to this that I'm sure we all can understand, because in the midst of all of this, about 2 years ago, Soluminati did end up losing his brother, rest in peace God Triller. His brother was also a very popular YouTuber within the 2K community as well. He passed away back in September of 2022, and this was around the time that Soluminati really began becoming inconsistent on YouTube. But I'm sure we could all understand why, because he stated multiple times that he was definitely like going through a lot in his personal life. But he has returned to YouTube a few times since this whole tragedy happened. So over the years, if you've been a longtime fan of Soluminati, you've got to see all the ups and downs of his career. But I think that we all could agree that after meeting Ash back in 2018, Soluminati's content and career would never be the same. But at the end of the day, it does seem like Soluminati managed to become a better person from all of this. So in the end, I guess that's all that really matters. But that's just my personal opinion. You guys know that the only opinion that I care about is y'all's opinion. So let me know down below.
Hold on. It's not sharp enough to do that. We might just make that shit go.
Pretty much every.
No, I'm jacking God Hand. That was a pain ass game. I'm jacking that. Best game ever. I'm jacking. And I never played it. I should do that. Why should that go and download that shit?
Pretty much everyone agrees that God Hand is a good game, but as much as people will repeat the idea that God Hand is good, I can't help but wonder how many of these people actually understand why God Hand is a good game in the first place. Like, what about its design makes it visionary? And as much as I love God Hand, I can't help but wonder how much.
Haunted by a concept you've been dying to make? Whether it's a pitch for a chilling film or a story.
Or how much of its newly hailed status has more to do with trendy internet discussion than it does this legion of God Hand appreciators. I think it's mostly people sort of collectively recognize this was a game that was good, that was designed well, that was not treated fairly by IGN and other game critics, and that it deserves to be treated with respect, which I do appreciate, but I also think it is worthwhile to play the game and discuss, okay, what is it actually doing that's really good? A really funny example of this is that recently IGN went back and sort of updated their position and stance on God Hand because their infamous 3 out of 10 review has become kind of a black mark on their journalistic record, as many as there are. You know, this one really stands out. So they went back and said, you know what? God Hand is actually cool now that we think about it. But what's funny, if you go through the actual revised review of God Hand and the discussion of the game, it's clear that they don't really understand why the game is good. And in fact, what they do is basically just compare it to Sekiro and say, yeah, it's like Sekiro and it's deep and stuff and it's got customizable moves. Isn't that cool? And as funny as it is that they use Sekiro instead of Dark Souls to avoid the outright meme of them always comparing games directly to Dark Souls, I think Sekiro is even less accurate of a comparison, because when it comes to action game design, I cannot think of a game further away from Sekiro than God Hand. Yes, they have some very slim surface similarities with the evade system, but other than that, they are absolutely nothing alike. And so I thought it'd be worthwhile to begin this review by discussing where God Hand comes from. Like, what is this game going for? What is its lineage? And in my opinion, you can trace God Hand's design back to two different things. The first is 2D beat 'em ups, especially Final Fight. And from what I understand, Mikami was actually directly inspired. Its really cool, innovative design ideas were dismissed too early and dropped in favor of a more commercially viable action game design like Devil May Cry. But if God Hand had been successful and had been something that was well received and was taken more seriously, I think we could have got a really interesting alternative timeline where we had God Hand style games becoming a subgenre of action game, just like there is a subgenre of Devil May Cry style action games and now a subgenre of Dark Souls style action games. I absolutely believe that God Hand has the potential and material to create its own distinctive style of action game, basically 3D beat 'em ups in a true sense, that could have went on and become something really cool. And I'll hear every now and again there are various action games that come out with a little bit of inspiration from God Hand and have little homages to God Hand or ideas from it, but nothing that I have seen has really captured and followed up on what this game has done. And so part of the goal of this review is not just to describe to you that God Hand is good, because like I said, this is pretty much consensus now, but rather to help you understand what modern action games could learn from God Hand and should incorporate from it. And so let's get to the core strengths of its game design. The first strength is the emphasis on real spacing and natural move balance. Real spacing is the interaction of hitboxes in space between you and your enemy. In a fighting game, this concept would be considered footsies. The idea is this neutral game of you sticking out hitboxes and your opponent sticking out hitboxes, and you have to interact and move around these hitboxes in real space. Like where you stand, where you move matters in terms of where the hitboxes are going and how you trade with them and everything like that. This sounds really obvious because it is fundamental, and it is something that most action games would just naturally emphasize and have for a very long time. Fighting games, beat 'em ups, shmups, all of these arcade genres are mostly based on real spacing and real interaction between you and your enemy. But in modern game design, this is becoming less and less of a foundation of action game combat, where you look at stuff like Batman Arkham Knight, or the Spider-Man game, or Sifu, or now Stellar Blade. A lot of these games are now trying to get around this whole gray area gradient of having to figure out getting around hitboxes and having to figure out the enemy hitboxes and what you do and how to place your hitboxes, because that's all complicated and nuanced, and forget all that. Where you look at stuff like Stellar Blade, yes, Stellar Blade has technically real space interactions, but because the enemy tracking is so massive and overwhelming, and because it has all these prescribed sort of responses like up dodge, down dodge, neutral dodge, parry, all this sort of stuff overrides the real spacing, where now if you watch people playing for no damage runs or fast completion runs or whatever, they're mostly just walking around and doing the prescribed follow-ups, because that is much more efficient and reliable than actually attempting to move around the hitboxes of these attacks with massive tracking. You'll see this a bit in Sekiro, you see this in Sifu. This is a big modern action game trend, and in fact, I believe the God of War developers have proudly given a term to this, which is suck to target.
To help with the jarring lateral suck problem, we scaled the range of suck to target depending on the target's angle to Kratos. The wider the angle, the lower the range. And we were pretty happy with the results. Some of the examples of suck to target in the video are obvious over large distances, but it's actually happening much more frequently than you might realize. As a fun fact, we actually toned down the suck distance dramatically for our hardest game difficulty, Give Me God of War, because we wanted players to pay more attention to their position in combat. Once again, I apologize. As a fun fact, we actually toned down the suck distance dramatically for our hardest game difficulty, Give Me God of War, because we wanted players to pay more attention to their positioning in combat.
Which means that the game is automatically placing you in the attack ranges for you. This sort of gray area of having to move around and place yourself in real space is now being eliminated because that's difficult and complicated. And so God Hand, in contrast, is all about the real spacing, not only with the properties of the attacks and the fact that the attacks are so close quarters and so telegraphed and so easy to see with the size of the limbs, and because people are punching and kicking rather than using giant fire swords or splash damage and stuff like that. Like, everything is really clear and easy to understand hitbox wise. Then you also have the camera system where you are pulled in with a really nice clear view of everything. You can see the hitboxes, you can see the attacks, and it's this great over the shoulder view where you can see what you're doing, you can see what the enemies are doing, and it's locked in and it's reliable. And you can even move away from enemies while facing them for that really precise positioning. This is something that God Hand is really good at, and why I think its over the shoulder camera is a lot better and more visionary than people give it credit for. But I'll talk about the camera system in detail a little bit later in the review. But the key is that God Hand is all about the real spacing, and the enemy tracking and enemy attacks are all very reasonable, they're all very avoidable, they're all very manageable. You don't have these sort of prescribed follow-ups that you have to do. And I know you might be thinking the evade system is like that, but it isn't. And I'll talk about the evade system here a bit as well. And so that is the first strength of real spacing, and paired with that is natural move balance, which brings us to the evade system. So what is natural move balance? Natural move balance is that the strengths and weaknesses of attacks and defensive options are based off the fundamental frame data of the move. That frame data is what determines if the move is good or not, or if you should use it or not. Again, this seems really obvious and simple, especially if you're used to fighting games, especially classic fighting games like
The Standing C in Guilty Gear,
where it's this big move with a big hitbox that comes out pretty quickly, is active for a while, is jump countable on hit and block, and has all these different utilities based off of its fundamental frame data. So this is going to be very familiar concept to fighting game players. But again, modern action game designs are getting away from this concept of natural move balance and instead are using statistical move balance. Stellar Blade, once again, where you have an attack and maybe that attack's natural frame data is unremarkable and it's not really that great, but the way you make it good is just by simply upgrading the statistical properties of the move, where now the move does 100 damage or whatever, and then it does 200 damage, then it does 300 damage, then it does 400 damage. So the move itself isn't fundamentally interesting or unique in the way it activates and the way it's on screen, but the statistical properties of the move is what makes it special. And this is what a lot of modern action game and RPG devs have turned to, because it's much easier to balance large masses of options and attacks and things based off of just using statistical tables and things like that. We even see this in fighting games now, like with Tekken's Heat system and with all these special systems they have going now with supers and heat and rage and all that sort of stuff. All of that is statistical balance. God Hand, however, keeps the properties of its moves natural for the most part. So the evade system is a great example of this. You have 4 different types of evades. You have the duck evade, the left evade, the right evade, and the back handspring evade, the back evade. All of these evades accomplish different things, but the difference with the evades and properties of God Hand versus a lot of modern action games would be that if you look at Stellar Blade, it has a similar system of an up evade, a down evade, a neutral evade, whatever, right? But the way it works in Stellar Blade is that these are all prescribed responses to the prompts of the enemy. There is one correct answer to up, to down, to neutral. The game is giving you a Simon Says little game of you press here, you press there, this is what you're supposed to do. This is statistical, forced, artificial sort of action design. This is not the way it works in God Hand at all. There is no prescribed evade you have to do when an enemy attacks you. You don't match up the evades to the enemy attacks. This was the misunderstanding of the reviewer at IGN when describing it like Sekiro. No, it's not like Sekiro. It's not like parries. It's not something you do that has to match up with the attack. Instead, in God Hand, the evade you use is determined by the context you're in and how much of a risk you're willing to take based on that context. So, for the example of a basic enemy attacking you, you can either duck dodge it, side dodge it, or back dodge it. The trade-offs of each of these is that a duck dodge has less iframes than the other ones, and you stay in place, so you're staying in danger with not many iframes, but the recovery is the fastest. So if someone's going for a single punch with a lot of lag on it, and you duck dodge it, then you're going to get a bigger punish on the enemy because you're right there and you're ready to punish, especially if you're going for counter hits. However, if the enemy's doing like a really big flurry of attacks that overlap on each other, then you can probably still duck dodge him because duck dodge is really good, but the risk is much higher, right? You have to duck dodge a lot of attacks in sequence with a lot of timing, and so you're taking a bigger risk there. Where if you back dodge it, now you're getting out of the reach of the enemy, so it's safer. And so the backhand spring is the safest dodge to use in a lot of cases because it has the most iframes and gets you out of danger mostly. But the trade-off is you're losing your offensive positioning, and if you have multiple enemies attacking you, you have recovery on that backhand spring that lasts longer, so you could backhand spring into some ugly counterattacks if there are more enemies nearby. And so there is a natural trade-off there where neither of them are always going to be the exact correct choice. It just really depends on what is happening on screen and what you need to happen. Same thing with the side dodges. The side dodges, from what I understand, have about the same amount of iframes as the duck dodge, but they take longer and they also move you a bit out of position. But the great thing about the side dodges is three-dimensional positioning is really important in this game, as I described earlier. Getting enemies to walls, getting out of walls, getting out of being surrounded. That side evade is actually really important and really useful for that, but it isn't something that's just prescribed in a sequence. It's a choice you make depending on the situation and depending on your knowledge of the gameplay system. And that style of an evade system is a lot deeper and more meaningful than just having prescribed prompts that you follow depending on what the enemy is telling you to do. I would think of the evade system of God Hand much more like a sidestep system in a 3D fighter or like a backdash system in Tekken. It's actually really funny and interesting how much of a parallel there is between Tekken's movement system and God Hand's movement system. I would say they are extremely alike in how the sidestep. And so I'd now like to discuss my thoughts on some key features of the game. And the first key feature is, of course, the camera angle, the limited third-person perspective. That's what I like to call it. I've heard other people refer to this as tank controls and comparing it to tank controls, but it really is not tank controls because tank controls are independent of the perspective of the camera, and that is not the case here. You are still context sensitive to the perspective of the camera. It's just that the camera is always locked to the player's back. In fact, if you take a step back and think about it, I guess that's a little pun for you. If you think about it, this camera angle is one step away from an FPS camera. It's merely an FPS camera that's pulled to the character's back. That's all that it is. But it is an effective, very powerful camera angle because it gives you a lot of precision with your movement while giving you a clear field of view. There is a reason why the first-person camera angle is really popular and really prolific throughout game design, because it's really good, because it's really effective at accomplishing what it's trying to do. And I think that holds true here with God Hand, where what this camera angle is able to achieve is to give the player a lot of precision over his movement and attacks, while also creating a limitation in the player's field of view. And that limitation is really important because it creates a very important risk reward, where God Hand, your character is really good at one-on-one encounters. And for the most part throughout the game, even later in the game, if you can get an enemy, even a really dangerous enemy like a demon, separated and fight it one-on-one, you're usually going to be able to dispatch that enemy pretty well. But the second you introduce a second enemy into the equation, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more complicated and difficult to manage. But if you are able to just see around yourself in a 360 sort of view, like you're able to do in Devil May Cry and a lot of modern action games now, that tension of being able to isolate and attack enemies one by one is pretty much removed, where you can see, oh, he's coming up behind me, they're going to counterattack me here. So what you could do is you separate them out. I do this in Devil May Cry all the time. And then you attack them in their little corner or whatever, and then you just wait for the other enemy to come in, and then you have your counterattack for that enemy. So there's no tension